And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Saturday mornings, flying weather graphics showing a lot of IFR here over the eastern Bering Sea from the Bering Strait all the way down to Unalaska Island and the extreme western Alaska Peninsula there. And a band of that extending in across Togiak Bay there and into the southwest mountains. Generally, the central interior all the way up to the Arctic coast, VFR. Marginal VFR now spreading northward here over the eastern interior up to just north of Eagle, and then a band of IFR here along the North Gulf Coast into the Coast Range there on the southern Copper River Basin, and then down IFR now for the northern Panhandle, staying VFR down to the south. A lot of marginal VFR across the Gulf, and some IFR from southern Kodiak Island there on down to the southwest. Good VFR out over the central western Aleutians, southwest Bering Sea. And for the afternoon, not much change here over the interior with marginal VFR over the southwest part of the state, and still a little bit of IFR here across Cape Newenham, Togiak, on up into the southwest hills there, with IFR still extending up along the Yukon Delta coast there across Nunivak Island up to the Bering Strait. And then marginal VFR for the Pribilofs, VFR, eastern, central Aleutians, then some IFR with the next system pushing in towards Shimia and Attu in the afternoon. IFR here a little more solidly entrenched now over the northern southeast coast, a little bit farther to the south with marginal VFR spreading over even the southern areas there. IFR, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, but now east of Kodiak Island. And for Sunday morning, band of IFR here right through the central interior, another band here along the western Alaska Range from McKinley Park down into just north of Iliamna Lake, and then IFR here for Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai Peninsula, possibly spilling into Portage, maybe Girdwood, eastward there across all of the North Gulf Coast, northern half of the Panhandle, IFR, marginal VFR down to Dixon Entrance, and VFR, Kodiak Island, and that area spreading up into southern Cook Inlet, more likely Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, VFR, Bristol Bay VFR, the Alaska Peninsula VFR, all the way out to Nikolsky, and not too bad for the central Aleutians as well. Just a little bit of marginal VFR around Adak, and then a little bit lower conditions, but still not too bad for the western areas. And VFR, Brooks Range, on out to the Arctic coast. For the afternoon Sunday, some IFR now here right along, and actually along the southern slopes of the central and western Brooks Range there, northern Koyukuk, Kobuk Valleys, up along the southwest coast. IFR, southern Seward Peninsula area, marginal VFR over much of the state now, still some VFR for the North Slope, central eastern Arctic coast, and improving conditions here over south central Alaska with a marginal VFR kind of giving way to VFR, especially for Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, and slowly improving Prince William Sound, VFR for Kodiak Sunday afternoon, IFR, southeast Copper River Basin, eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat, now in about the northern 3/4 of the southeast coast, IFR, marginal VFR holding over the southern areas, passes tomorrow, and the Tuvik-Anigan looking pretty good, at least for one more day with VFR flying for both those passes. And Lake Clark and Merrill, the entire Alaska Range looking pretty marginal for the day Saturday, rainy, windy. Isabel and Mentasta, all forecast to be marginal at times, if not most of the time. And for Tanina, marginal VFR, Portage, IFR, and Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet up to about Bristol Bay here into northern Bristol Bay, around King Salmon, back down across Fognak Island, 4,000 feet there, nudging up to just into southern Kodiak Island area. And from there, going to the icing graphic, considerable moderate rime icing, a couple of areas here, big area coming up in across south central Alaska, the North Gulf Coast, sliding into the northern Panhandle. Another area out here along the southwest coast, northern Bering Sea, up through the Bering Strait, also into Norton Sound, northern Kuskokwim Valley as well. And then with the next front, some more icing coming into the far western Aleutians. And with the jet stream, wind's not all that strong at 33,000 feet. We've got this low pressure area pulling northward here. 85 knots, though, south of Kodiak Island, and really at this elevation, not all that strong. Northwest 90 for the Queen Charlottes, going to 9,000 feet, a little more impressive with this low pulling northward over the southeast Bering Sea to just near or west of Nunivak Island. South wind 60 knots, southeast 50 knots there across the Seward Peninsula area. Light over the interior, and 45 knot west-northwesterlies there just northeast of Yakutat, and northwest 65 knots here coming down across the east central Aleutian areas. And for 3,000 feet, 50 to 55 knot easterlies there right along the central and eastern Arctic coast, and 50 to 55 knot east-southeast winds also here from Norton Sound up into the Kobuk Valley area. 45 knots right along the northwest coast there into the Chukchi Sea. And then west-northwest, 65 knots coming around the bottom side of that low there, swinging around to the southeast at 50 knots here from Osage Kamishak Bay right on up into Norton Sound. And then 55 knot winds with that next system way out there to the west. Panhandle, pretty light winds, as well as the southeast and eastern interior. Turbulence-wise, smooth, none really expected for the southeast coast and Copper River Basin area, but quite an area of considerable moderate turbulence from the northwest coast, covering all the western interior here, improving out toward the coast in the afternoon, but moderate turbulence, Bristol Bay into Kamishak Bay, maybe across southern Cook Inlet there, and then back down along the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians, as well as along the eastern Arctic coast. Pretty bumpy conditions there as well with those increasing easterly winds.